begin?
I know, right? Hi, everybody. Consent tools and stuff like that. What do you guys use? What do you guys want to use? What do you guys have seen that is awesome?
You want me to start?
Yeah. Sure. I was going to say, has anyone come to any of our other four ones that we've done? Because I'm more. If no one puts a hand up, it means I can repeat myself. There are many tools. My favorite one is the RPG consent checklist, which I believe I always say I believe was put out by Monte Cook.
Yep.
Originally, yeah. So that is. If you don't know what it is.
It is free for you guys.
It's free. You can download it. It's great. I email it to my players before I start a new campaign. I let them fill it out. I say, I'm not going to share it with all the other players. I'm just going to come back, and it's really cool. It's kind of it uses the red, green, yellow, amber. What do you call it in this country? Yellow system. So, and it basically lists like a whole bunch of different topics, and you can just fill it out by ticking which color. Like, if you put green and everything, it's like you're good. If yellow, it's kind of like maybe depending on the situation. Red is like I just don't want that in there at all. And there's even spaces for you to fill in custom topics that are specific to you that are not there. So I use that because I get all my players to send them to me. I collate them, and then I send back everybody. Like, here is a blank one with everybody's collated so everyone knows what is and isn't off the table. And I find the X card is a quicker thing to do when you're playing with strangers at a convention, because you obviously don't have time to send everyone a consent checklist or anything like that. But what about yourself?
To that note, I'll just kind of add on to it. We always do a session 0 where we're able to kind of discuss the entire campaign, what we're going to be doing, or single game even, and talk about characters and about what our lines and veils are, which is another tool. But to kind of like riff off of what I call the stoplight, we actually print out a stoplight, we put it in front of the players, so that at any point, because you don't know what might trigger somebody, and I've had players discover that they don't like the idea of dismemberment mid-game, like when it's them. They're okay if other people are being dismembered or they're doing the dismembering, but as soon as they start getting dismembered, they're not happy with it. So we find that having something like that in front of the players allows them to yellow, to slow down, red, stop, we got to talk. And as soon as the player taps that, we don't even have to think about it. Everybody breaks out of character, takes a moment, finds out what the issue is, backtracks, and then, retcons or does whatever we have to move on. And it's okay to fail. This is what I really want to say about safety and role-playing, especially when it comes to horror. People are so afraid of, we have to get it right all the time. We can never misstep, because if we do, it's going to be horrible and the game's going to be ruined. Wrong. Your game is ruined when you don't pay attention to your players and don't have that empathy to be able to understand that there's a problem and then fix the problem. We all make mistakes. We're all going to misstep. There's been times when I've been told, consent-wise, no spiders. And then I start talking about this weird body horror thing that's crawling out of the corner. Shit, that's a spider. Yeah. Okay, wait, let me change it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Are you doing questions? I don't think so, right?
I will do questions at the end.
Thank you.
That makes it a little bit easier for flow of everything. One of the things that I absolutely love, and this is something that I borrow from a role-playing game called RPG Nasty, which is that you have I don't want to see this at the table, but then every player gets to narrate a scene that they want to see at the table, respecting everyone else's notes. And so, they can say, okay, I want to see somebody's eyeballs go bouncing off, and down the hall. And that, at some point in the game, should happen. Okay, and that's the GM can facilitate that. The GM can say, okay, everyone gets a chance to narrate that during a scene, but it's going to be random as far as what it is. And then now you have players trying to navigate how to get that into the scene. So it's a way for them to also kind of own up to the horror and to the gore and stuff like that, especially if it's consensual.
That's a great thing about consent, is that it allows you to draw a line so you know where the line is, so that you can create the intense, scary experience. It's a lot different than just swinging swords in a dungeon. Everybody knows what they're going to get to. Horror is about the unexpected and about pushing those boundaries without crossing them.
Yeah, and some people say that when they talk about consent stuff, that it restricts what you can talk about, but it's true in a really negative sense if you want to look at it. But the best thing about it is once you know exactly what's on the table, I mean, if everyone's comfortable with spiders, if everyone's there, cool, I'm going to go ham on spiders because I know I'm not going to upset anybody, as opposed to thinking I'll see if I mention some spiders here and just feel it out, and you're like, oh, everyone was cool with it, but I could have gone harder if I knew, using spiders sub that out for literally anything else. But yeah, so it's good.
All right, now that we've moved past the appetizer of consent and safety and spiders with ham.
Did you all say that here? Go ham.
I didn't say that it had hands, but it did have hands.
Ham. Do you not
Ham.
say
Oh,
go
I thought he
ham?
said spider with hands.
Because he said go ham on spiders.
Okay, I thought he said spider with hands.
That's a phrase
which
you
is
have
pretty-
here, though, right? Do you say that? I go ham.
I go ham.
I go ham.
I
on
don't
it?
say that.
Do people say
I've,
that?
People
I've
do
heard
in the
that
US.
phrase
Is it-
before.
oh, okay. I thought it was a weirdly, uniquely Australian thing for a second. Yeah.
Ham on
always
ham.
good to know. Sorry. Go.
No, that's good.
So to get to the main course, what is historical horror? How does it differ from regular standard horror or other genres?
Are we talking about horror through history, technically, or are we talking about period-setting horror? No, I'm just being.
I mean, we could
It's a good
we could
starting
actually
point.
differentiate,
Yeah, the
because
history
there
of
is a
horror.
there's a difference between that.
Yeah.
I think
So-
it's really important actually because
Yeah.
there is period horror, but which I think you have the options of like setting something in a specific period that is a whole era, right? Or actually getting more myopic and saying that this is set within a certain decade that has a certain feel.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
I also feel like it's important to differentiate. Like there is like horrific things that actually happened in history,
Mm-hmm.
right? And things that are horrific that are still affecting us to this day, versus having a horror story set in a historical time period. And so there is a big difference between all of that.
So what eras, what decades, what settings work best?
Well, it depends. I think if you look into like any part of history, it's just like anything else that inspires you to write anything. So, for example, one of the things we were just talking about, I mean, I'm Irish, I can talk about this. So the potato famine in Ireland, it started because there was a really unique fungus that got into potatoes and would, like, over the course of just a few hours, turn the potatoes black. And they're called black praties, because that's what they said, right? But Ireland has got a very, very passionate belief in the Fae, and there was this thinking at the time that the Fae were angry with people in Ireland and they were starving them. So, if I'm comfortable with it because I'm Irish, I've read the stuff about it. If that's something that everyone was interested in exploring, that's something I could look at setting a horror game in 1850s Ireland, exploring that. Hey, what if some of the potato famine actually was like a dark, twisted fairy trying to exact vengeance on somebody, or somebody had crossed them. That's an example of that I just thought of just now. Of taking the reason you would move it into historical horror is because that's something you can draw on from history that you can reinterpret through a horror lens.
Yeah.
I do a lot of zombie apocalypse horror. One of our games is Outbreak Undead, and it is very much a kind of not a setting-free game where you kind of put it wherever you want. And it has a lot of opportunities to put things within certain settings, within eras, within decades. And what I really enjoy doing, and we're actually doing this tomorrow on the main, I'm plugging this right now. We're doing this on the main stage tomorrow at noon. I've got some amazing players, and right now we're doing an ARG where you're collecting resources for the players that are going to be on the main stage. Well, and they're the leaders of factions, right? So you're gathering the food and the water and the guns and ammo and everything that they're going to use to try to negotiate and get ahead. That apocalypse setting that I use, the apocalypse started in the 90s. So I do a lot of 90s flashbacks to when people were, doing things, or their parents were doing things before the apocalypse, right? And that's a decade, right? And it's like the 90s, are fashionable now. It doesn't even feel like it's historical, right? But I did a load, despite also having lived through it, I did a load of research to really kind of hone in on what I wanted to focus on from the 90s. And I feel like even though it's a more recent modern historical period, it is still historical. And so when you think about these games that you might be playing and where you're going to set them and what is historical and what isn't, I think it just really matters on your perspective as how you're coming at it. Because you could still have a flashback to yesterday. I don't know that would be historical, but technically speaking, it is. Thursday at GenCon is now history.
Yep.
I'll just add on to that I've written Call of Cthulhu stuff set in the 90s because I wanted to write modern Call of Cthulhu. And a really lazy reason to set in the 90s is because I don't have to worry about people Googling things. If it's 1992, I'll check it out. You can't check your smartphone. Don't worry about it. Let's keep moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the eras that is used most often for horror is Victorian-era.
Sure.
And that's because of just the inherent real-world occultism that was built up in that time period. And the fact that so many people were buying into hauntings and possessions and tarot readings and stuff at that time, and a lot of stuff was co-opted from other religions and other cultures and stuff like that into, what at that time was modern day, and then kind of was assimilated throughout, European culture into all of our culture. And so Victorian stuff, it can have some problematic things, right? But you get into things like...
Could you just say the year bandwidth in case people are not sure exactly when the Victorian...
Yeah,
roughly?
Roughly is like 1800s.
I think...
1800s.
I get confused with Elizabethan sometimes.
Yeah, no, not that.
No,
Though
no,
Elizabethan
it's
horror would be
16, yeah.
amazing, because then you have Shakespeare.
Yeah.
For those of you more familiar with the American educational system, the Victorian era is what we refer to as the Civil War period.
And then other things, other like good setting for historical horror would be Haunted West, which is by Darker Hughes Studio. It is Black history in Western United States. And it is amazing. It is for everybody to play, by the way. Don't think that you cannot play it because you are my tone. Okay? He has a whole, like almost an entire chapter on how to play this as white people. It is fantastic. Chris is amazing. He's here, actually, I think. And he's going to be at GameholeCon, too. And so if you ever have a chance to meet Chris Spivey of Darker Hughes Studio and play his games, please play his games. So.
And what era was that set in?
That was Haunted West.
Wild West.
Wild West.
Wild West.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with the American system, that is what the rest of the world refers to as the Victorian era. So you guys touched on a lot answering, the question there. But let's move on to monsters. You mentioned zombies.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned Victorian ghosts, and I think it's
spiders with hands.
Candy spiders. So what are some good monsters that we can ground in historical eras, and why did they work in those historical eras?
I think people are the best monsters in the story. Sure, monsters are great. I love like the fear of like what happens after, but it's always the result of something human. So for me, it's always the drama really is with the people. But that's kind of a cheap answer. So I'm going to say that as a subset of humanity, I find zombies fascinating because it's the lack of humanity that the zombies have and the fear of being consumed alive and the mobs of unintelligible, the tidal wave of death that's coming towards you. You can't escape death, right? So for me, zombies are number one, but I mean, I think that also is pretty broad because I live in a very Cronenberg universe of like, what is a zombie? We don't know. It's probably alien. There might be extra arms and things coming out of their mouth with tentacles and who knows. But it's really inhuman masses that you can't control or escape for me.
I'm not sure if there's a particular historical period that I've chosen because there was a monster at that time. I like to take a monster that I already like and try to find a way to put it in something. So Mark Morrison, who's a prolific Call of Cthulhu writer, he wrote a book called Reign of Terror, which is the
French Revolution.
That I didn't know. I was looking to you to be like, what do the Americans call that? I'm not covering which French. Apparently, they had a few revolutions.
Back to back, yeah.
Yeah, which is weird, right?
The Reign of Terror was, I think, the third.
The third one, yeah. So I believe. Stop me if I'm wrong about this.
I'm apparently the historical.
You are.
You are.
The
I've written historical horror.
the peasant class rose up against the monarchy and multiple times chopped off their heads, but then the monarchy came back. So not sure if there's anything to learn from that, but maybe salt the earth. Yeah. But what Mark Morrison did, he was like, wouldn't it be interesting if some of the bourgeois were actually like these just decadent vampires that were existing, right? Now, having said that, I also think there's a spot of responsibility, and it might tie into what you were saying about how the evil is always human. I think it's an important thing, a pitfall to avoid, unless you've done your consent checklist very, very thoroughly, is to not go back and use a historical event and replace the actual historic monster with some sort of supernatural creature to excuse the actions of an actual historical horrible person. Just something to keep in mind.
Yes.
I would say that. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's what. Yeah. But anyway, go on to saying I like to put a shoggoth in medieval Britain and see what happens.
In a powdered wig.
In a powdered wig, that too, yeah.
Shoggoth in a powdered wig. I'm going to submit that.
Yeah. Do it, yeah. Shipped.
I shipped that, yeah.
Yeah.
I've written historical horror. I wrote on Never Going Home, which is a World War I Eldritch horror.
Oh, did you really?
I did.
That's so cool.
I've written on every single book.
Oh, that's so cool.
But one of the things that I absolutely love doing, because it's Eldritch horror, but it's not like Cthulhu horror. It is like both sides are still doing awful shit, and then all of a sudden you throw the occult into there. And one of the things that I did was that I kind of took some Russian fantasy figures such as Father Frost and Baba Yaga, and I basically said, okay, what happens if these fantasy creatures are actually possessed by the other, which is like the horror that happens, and then people start worshiping them, and worship gives power, right? And so now you are feeding into this, and this is like normal people. This is not the soldiers that you are playing in the war. This is normal people, and all of a sudden the soldiers that you play are stumbling into Father Frost in the middle of the Siberian winter and going, this is not supposed to happen. And so taking like historical or fantasy figures and doing a what if, right? I'm not taking away from the actual story, because those stories are meant to be tales of lessons learned, and sometimes the lessons are violent, especially when you do Russian. If you ever look into Russian history and Russian occult, I had nightmares doing research for some of that stuff, because the real life stuff is actually sometimes more horrible than what I wrote, and what I wrote was not good.
And you don't have to make stuff.
I would say not good. It was really good, but it was
unpleasant.
It was not pleasant.
Yeah. You don't have to make stuff up with Rasputin. Most of it was just kind of...
Rasputin was also in there, and
he
was not
You don't stretch much.
He wasn't a good person in general.
No.
And I made him even worse.
I believe he was actually a wizard too. If you look into
actually.
any of the stuff,
No, he was actually...
just explain to me.
Himself,
Explain to me how it happened. If
he
he wasn't
believed
really
himself to be a cleric.
Yeah.
But so not all clerics are good, and that's how I played it. Was that he thought himself to be a cleric, and his healing was not good. It was not a good one.
And apparently, there was all these accounts that he had the most upsetting eyes. The way he'd look at, so if you want to Google a photo of Rasputin with his eyes, it's actually pretty weird.
It was often described as goat's eyes.
Yeah. Comparable to Manson in a certain way. Like if you look at some of the Manson photos and this glaze kind of.
I'm not putting it past that they're the same guy. Yeah. So there's no way of knowing.
You're not wrong.
Just similar on that topic, there's another thing that I really like doing. If you really wanted to get into history in the minds of from a role playing perspective, a thing I've been really enjoying recently in my Pendragon games, which is Pendragon is a game where you play a knight in King Arthur's Britain, but I like playing with what people from certain periods of history would have known, and because horror is basically literally if you explain I don't know, if the Shoggoth burst through the door right now, we all freaked out, and I was like, oh, it's okay, no, his name's Fred, and he's chill. You're like, oh, okay, cool. If you, it's literally like, if you understand something completely, stop me if you're wrong, but I don't think you can be as frightened of it,
No,
because ultimately,
I agree 100%.
it's ingrained.
Yeah, no.
The reason we are scared is because we do not understand.
Yeah.
And so a really fun thing I did in Pendragon recently, I ran a scenario where there was this evil beast being reported on the villages. Oh, there's this beast that's being on. You have to go kill the beast. And then when the players find the beast, I said this thing walks out, and it's like, it's really tall, and it's yellow with mottled brown flesh, and it's got like knees that look like coconuts that have been jammed in there, and it has this neck that is as long as your lance and horns that end in knuckles, and it starts eating the leaves and one of my players got it immediately, and two of them were like, what the fuck? We gotta kill this thing. What the hell is that thing?
Them.
Yeah. Well, no, seriously. Yeah,
I do this every time I go to the zoo.
Yeah. What the hell is that?
What the hell is that? I gotta get out of here.
But yeah, just playing on the fact of like, you as people now will be like, oh, I understand that this person is maybe not a witch, but what she's burning in the fire that we're all breathing in, we're maybe now hallucinating. But my character in the year 480 doesn't know that. They're like, shit, real witch, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I'm freaking out, So that's a very fun thing to be able to do, I think.
If you don't know Plato's Cave, by the way, you probably should look that up. It involves shadow puppets, and not in a fun way.
It's a great meme template.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a real fun way.
I think that, to kind of riff off of that just a little bit, misused religion is extremely frightening to me. Like the idea of people being kind of subjugated under the false pretense of salvation or a better spiritual understanding. When people misuse that,
Luckily, that's never happened.
Yeah, thankfully, as humans, we've never done this. So, but I think that historically, you have so many options there. I mean, going back to, maybe not witches always as villains, but the Salem witch trials were horrifying on many fronts. And what was done to people based on misunderstanding and misused power. That's frightening. And you can choose your historical spot, and you can almost find something to thematically tie to what you want to convey. So it could be a feeling, it could be a vibe, it could be kind of the idea of whatever your underlying current, because all good horror, I believe, has a story that it's trying to tell you without hitting you over the head with it. And if you understand that, you can then reverse engineer it into your games. So it could be like, all people are equal. You choose that, and then you go backwards and you try to figure out, well, now we need an aristocracy that isn't going to allow people to be equal. And then therefore, who is controlling that aristocracy? Okay, we're going to do vampiric monsters in white powdered wigs that are slowly manipulating what they see as the herds of food for them, And you find a time period that fits that, and you can kind of build backwards.
That answer your question?
I don't even know what that question was.
We've been talking for 20 minutes. Yeah.
So, we've had mention of several games, Never Going Home, World of Darkness, Cthulhu, just in general. Are there any games that present themselves either mechanically or thematically, specifically as especially suited for historical horror?
I'm going to say Call of Cthulhu because I don't think Brian
Told me to keep
contractually
saying
can.
it.
Yeah. But I'll just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's the OG. 100%. 50 years old now. Yeah.
You don't look a day over 35.
That's not my exact age, so you really, that's
Nailed it
very
on the
good.
head.
At the risk of sounding like a shill for the company I work for, Call of Cthulhu, one of the best things about Call of Cthulhu is that you can set it at any time period, and we have books that cover that, like Dark Ages, Weird West, Reign of Terror, Regency Cthulhu, if you want to play Bridgerton Cthulhu. These are all books that actually exist. And the best thing about the Regency era book is that we added a new mechanic about your reputation. So my elevator pitch is,
good.
if you want to play Regency Cthulhu, that's Cthulhu on hard mode, because now there's 3 ways to die. You can be killed. You can have your mind broken by saying something you can't comprehend, and you can be caught in a room with someone you are not married to. So there's 3 ways your character can be ostracized from the game.
A cultist, lady whistle down.
Yeah. If you're interested, there's a wonderful scenario for Regency Cthulhu available on our community content platform on Drive Through RPG called Host and Hostility. So
I like that.
check that one out.
Some of my favorite horror games are pretty, era agnostic. Dread, Tin Candles. These are classics that everybody knows, but they're very open. They're like, here's a system. You come up. There's no campaign book. There's nothing that you can really pick up for that. Here's some ideas, maybe, but for the most part, here's a structure to get to the horror. What's going to create the tension. So I think a good system is going to allow you to kind of pick and choose. And if you're playing a lot of horror right now and you're doing a lot of modern horror, start your game out, of course, following your session 0 and your consent and everything like that, but see if you can't get away with like starting a modern horror game and then start tracking it backwards as you're kind of telling the story of what happened the reverse direction, right? And go back as far as you possibly can. I've had some great successes with campaigns like that, using a lot of different systems, but I feel like Call of Cthulhu is really the place where so much of that has started, because it's been around for so long, but it's also had all that time to gestate and to grow.
Are you familiar with Vampire Dark Ages? Would you like to talk?
Yeah.
I would actually just love to hear you talk about that.
You just want to hear me talk about it?
I do specifically. 'Cause
Okay.
I've actually never played Vampire outside of a modern setting.
Oh.
And I'm told, for instance, Jason Carl says that he thinks that is the best version of Vampire, is Dark Ages. But, I mean, he's maybe biased, but...
He's that old, though.
Yeah, he's that...
He remembers those days.
So here's the funny thing is that I have read all of the Dark Ages book. I have never actually played it.
Okay.
But I don't agree with Jason on that. That it is not.
Well, you've not played it, so how do you?
I've not played it. But even just reading it, if you are looking though for really good like reference material for some historical horror stuff, the Vampire Dark Ages and the Mage Dark Ages actually is really, really good. It kind of outlines like a whole bunch of different eras for you to be able to play in, and then gives you some like plot hooks. So you can just system agnostic those and then steal them for your own, and your players may not even realize it. I often will use romance novels as plot lines if I can't think of anything, because none of my group reads no romance novels, and they're like some of them actually do have decent plot lines, loosely speaking, if you manipulate it just a little bit, but but they're interesting enough where you can kind of plot them into a game and have stuff happen to the characters and just X out the romance stuff. You don't need all that stuff. And so looking for stuff like that. When it comes to mechanics and stuff like that, I love tension builders. So like Dread is a great one. Never Going Home, I'm going to plot that again, is meant to be a meat grinder game. All the scenarios I write don't end up being meat grinders, but that's why we have other writers for that. But basically, in order for you to manipulate the dice in the +1 system, you have to take away parts of your character until there's nothing left to take away, and then your character dies. And so, like, in some of the scenarios that are being run here, you might play 3 or 4 characters in that time frame because it is meant to basically, murder a whole bunch of characters. And then you can manipulate that because you're taking away parts of yourself, but you're getting cool things happening occulty-wise or whatever when you're doing that. So I love stuff like that. Anything that builds tension.
I'm actually, speaking of the White Wolf stuff, though, I'm partial to the Werewolf Wild West.
I was going to ask, I've never...
It's really good. I have
It
played
is.
that.
I'm a big Wild West guy. But
I've written fantasy for it. It's on Storyteller's Vault.
It's all in the people that you play with any system,
Yeah.
right? But I've had some really great success with that, especially focusing on the railroad and sort of the intentional, like, industrialization of America and also all the abuse and the horrible things that happened. But then you can kind of take that setting and use these railroad barons as your targets for a lot of that ire, and then, you know, do a lot of really great things about that. And the you know,
Absolutely.
werewolf, when done, I think right, you really are fighting against yourself all the time. So you're really the monster, but you have to control that.
Yeah, I was kind
Go.
of to that a little bit, just talking about the Wild West stuff. And I'm sure this isn't the only period of history where you could do this, but I think there is room to explore horror without explicit supernatural horror, because there's things that, and thinking about just the Wild West, there's a role-playing game that I always wanted, that I'm glad, because I now don't have to write it, I just got it. That I picked up in the UK earlier this year, called Tales from the Old West. And it is literally like, it is dead with the role-playing game. It is Wild West role-playing. There is no supernatural anything. It's not Weird West. And I really want to run that, but from the perspective of like, I don't mean like human evil. I mean like just the idea of being on the frontier of what at the time was the edge of the known world, and the horror of exploring, and just being like, holy shit, a river. What do you do? You can't swim. You're from Europe. What, like, you know, and just like, what is the horror of that? Or like a snake bite. Like, what is the horror of dealing with that stuff? That you didn't boil the water before you drank it. Now you think you're dying because you're violently ill. And I think that just like anything, if you put the right mood, vibe, and tension into it, you can make any that sort of exploration the same as if you were running like, I don't know, a game of Alien and you're exploring an unknown planet.
When you put it like that, Oregon Trail was my first.
Well, that's what I mean. Right? Yeah.
You died of
Oregon. Dysentery. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The wagon wheel broke. Well, I guess you're going to die in the middle of nowhere. And that should be terrifying without there having to also. I mean, then you
Which of your children are you going to eat first?
Yeah, but you can also be like, oh, and then there are also vampires that live underground if you want to do that. But I still think that there's
I think one of the other things too that I absolutely love is the fact that sometimes the horror is never seen. So it is the continued tension of things, such as you might be fighting against the railroad barons. You might never actually be able to get to them. And it just continues on because, again, industrialization continued on and continued to do horrific things. And you know, in order for anybody to be able to fight against that, they had to, you know, unionize, and even then that still didn't help a lot because they end up getting bombed.
In our campaign, they actually killed the railroad baron, and then 3 more took his place.
Yeah.
That was the end of the campaign.
It's the monarchy hydra. It's really what it is, the aristocracy hydra. So, yeah, it just keeps coming back and back. And, you know, like, you know, you get rid of 1 and 3 replace it. And you're like, well, now what do we do, you know? So I think that can sometimes be the actual horror.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I also think there's some time periods that just have things that were normal that for some, if you're lucky like me, you might just personally find kind of weird and creepy. For me, it's VHS tapes. I think I think like the white noise is really scary. And did anyone else, was this just, I feel like I've spoken to other people that when as a kid I was really legitimately frightened of having the VHS tape go all the way to the end where you get the weird coloured bar thing. Some of you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But that was just really frightening to me. I don't know. I remember kids who were like, "Oh, just let it play." I'm like, "What? No, you gotta stop it."
The Ring made it a lot.
Well, then the Ring came out and made it worse.
Yeah,
it's a VHS tape.
But somebody else felt like that in Japan for sure.
Yeah.
So with that, you know, you've got tapes and something physical. I think there's something to say too, like what are the ephemera of the era that you're trying, like is a gas lamp frightening?
Yeah.
How do you make that frightening? Because that is something that's so crucial or so big to that age.
Audio quality on old Victrola recordings, I think could be really creepy.
Yeah, because
you know,
the way that it feels so far away, right? That echo.
Yeah. Anyway.
Definitely.
Just thinking out loud.
I always love the concept of throwing a modern day item into past.
Sure.
So one of the things that I've used before is literally like a viewfinder. Anyone even remember that? Basically, you put like a little thing in there, and then you look into it, and there's like a 3D picture, and you
have to hold up to the light.
You have to hold up to the light.
Click through, and it would rotate. Yeah.
And then you throw that into like a setting where that hasn't been invented yet, and then you just watch the player, and you don't actually tell them, oh, it's a viewfinder. You're like, oh no, it looks like a box, and there's like 2 holes there, and there's like a little thing that can move up and down, and they're like, oh, what is that?
It's a giraffe.
Yeah.
You know, the viewfinder was actually invented in the Victorian age.
Yep.
And the way that they look, they used to have these long arms that came out. They were even more frightening.
Yeah.
And you'd have the slides and stuff, and they would hold them up, and some of them you'd strap to your head. I mean, the viewfinder is a terrifying thing.
Yes.
You're dead on. Like, it goes deep.
The slides were made of glass.
Yes, that's right,
So,
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're looking into a light, you can just drop it right into your
Go pick up a copy of Cthulhu by Gaslight. That's another one. Sorry.
And one of my favorite examples, it doesn't actually come from a horror game. It comes from Pugmire, which is
Terrifying.
It is
It is.
absolutely terrifying. It's basically D&D, and you play as dogs.
Anthropomorphic dogs, though, right?
Anthropomorphic dogs.
Yeah.
But
Very good one.
one of the very first stories is of one of the main characters coming across this like square in a dungeon, and she puts her paw on it, and it lights up, and then she's kind of like trying to move things around, and stuff is happening on this glowing cube, and as the more and more descriptions start, you're like, that's an iPad. She's playing with an iPad. I love doing stuff like that because like you don't get it until because you're like, oh, something's glowing. Oh, it's magical. And no, it's an iPad. The magic is, how did the battery last that long, right?
Well, that answers all of my questions. Does anybody in the audience have anything that they would like to ask? Corinne.
Yeah. How do you maintain like your sort of tension building and your horror and like the sort of creation of this like fear, while also like using these sorts of modern elements that players are going to ultimately recognize? Because I feel like it kind of shatters the illusion of like this is a scary thing if someone finally realizes that it's an iPad or like something else. So how do you maintain that?
Okay, so one of the things we have talked about this in the past is that horror needs to have up and downs. You would use the discovery of that as one of the downs.
Okay.
So, and then you would make it so that they might have to use it later to solve the mystery. So like, yes, that the discovery of what that is, or the realization of what that is for the player, is going to break that tension, but you're planning for that. And then they're going to have to try to use that in a creative way to solve the next problem, which is going to build that tension back up with that object. You have to make the object actually important to the story in order for it to work. So.
I use a lot of like phrases to kind of keep track of stuff, but something that I say a lot and put into some of the stuff that I write is that revelation doesn't have to be resolution. And the idea that your characters or players realize something doesn't mean that the problem is solved. In fact, if you do it right, it means that now that they know, the problem is getting worse, and it may not even have a resolution. So the fact that they realize that it's a viewfinder, what the characters should be asking, or the players should be asking, not the characters, why is this here? How did it get here? What is it for? Those kind of things can kind of like immediately kind of nerf the viewfinder. Oh wait, it's sucking my soul out? Hold on.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think you both covered that very well.
Okay, anybody else have any? Oh, in the back there?
Yeah, do you have any advice about maintaining like a horror tension when like your players are trying to like joke about it and break that tension?
You had an excellent answer for this the other year. I think we did this. I think
I don't remember.
It was
I'm
something.
sure
It was something
like
like you said you let that happen. I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I think about it a lot. If people are joking around, but you just remain staunchly serious, and you will just stare and bring it back. Yeah, cool. They can laugh. That's cool. But you, as the gateway to adventure, will remain in the vibe that you were trying to establish at the table.
Nailed it.
Or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, you're the center point, right? You're the one who's telling the story. You're the one who's kind of like feeding the energy. They can break that energy. And in fact, this is important for lots of aspects, at least when I run for horror, is that you have to set the tone. Levity is good. Them laughing and breaking the tone, because if everything is grimdark all the time, you're playing 40K. So what you want to do is give them a roller coaster. In fact, I find that when an NPC is goofy and silly, and then all of a sudden they find them dismembered in the closet, the reaction is different. You know, the tone is always going to be set by you, and if people are being repeatedly silly and goofy, just keep holding the tone that you want to set. And if that doesn't work, stop the game, have a conversation about what you're doing. Say, would you like for me to go get a copy of Toon, the cartoon game, and we can play that if this isn't what you want to do?
Yeah.
Because you may have a player problem. But what he said, which I said last year.
Yeah.
I
Great.
did want to say that, like, the vampire one, like, I played that with dice. It is so good.
Oh, yeah.
If you do that, it was like around the time of Alexander the Great.
Very good.
So good. Totally underrated.
The best ghost stories are all historical, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where all the ghosts live.
They came
You have
from.
a question in the back there?
Yeah, so for a lot of our games, it's a lot of miniatures, dungeons, things like that. And while I think a lot of us will shift over to narrative, and I think that's probably why we're here, when do you show as opposed to tell for a lot of the narrative?
Do you mean using miniatures in your game
No,
or something
just,
like that?
Pictures.
Okay, yeah.
Or things like that, as opposed to, doing the tell and allowing your players to have, their imagination kind of run rampant with them for a horror setup.
Right. If you don't mind, I'll just jump in right away.
Yeah.
I'm a by trade, as well as doing all my creative stuff with publishing, I'm a fabricator, and I build sets and fabricate props, and I do a lot of that. So for me, I'm always looking for ways to bring in actual physical elements to a game, or to find images or some way to show. Adding things to your game, as long as it's not distracting people too much from the actual game itself, is a really useful tool. And if you can put things in it that are subverting expectation and also kind of building a greater sense of dread by hiding things within them that they didn't realize right away. Letters are a great way to do that. And I mean, this is old stuff. I mean, even if you're playing mostly D&D, for instance, if you go through some of the old Ravenloft books from the 80s, the box sets and all that, they would have tarot cards and dice that you could use to tell fortunes, and they would have additional old folded letters and stuff that you could hand out. It's always about, A, what's right for your table, but also pacing your story so that the narrative is first, but then after that, you have a support scaffold of material that you can do. Now, whether that's music, or whether it's physical handouts, or it's a tone at the table, you have a lot of tools that you can use to pace the adventure or the story so that it moves forward in the way that you want. I don't know.
I would agree with that. I don't use a lot of props specifically, but sometimes I'll do puzzle boxes, and get a puzzle box or something like that for them to be able to solve, and that generally will slow down stuff. But sometimes you have to give them a couple of clues as to what it is before you give it to them.
I use a lot of egg timers too. If you turn an egg timer on and set it down on the table,
Oh, yeah,
and start
absolutely.
talking to them about what's happening and don't say anything else, it'll create a tone.
Yeah. The other thing too is that you can do stuff
Yeah, that's great.
and then they're like, wait, what? What's going on?
Let's make a dice roll behind the screen. You'd be like, oh, okay.
I mean, I do that
Don't
as
worry
a-
about that.
I do that as a teacher too, and
Yeah.
they're like, what are you doing?
Okay, yeah,
And then
yeah.
they stop doing whatever they were doing. So.
Okay, I think I saw a question over here, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, let me pull it up. So if you were newer to this, or a younger writer, or just a newer creator or whatever, you mentioned not having to deal with Google or a smartphone in terms of your setting.
Yeah.
But if your historical is not 1990, if your historical is 2010 to 2020,
Sure.
right?
How dare you?
What are the pitfalls? What are the pitfalls in using that? And yeah.
I mean, in terms of, well, it depends what kind of horror game you're doing. I was using it more in reference to Call of Cthulhu, where it's an investigation. People are like, oh, I'll just Google where that was, or what that is, or what
The demon's name is Fred.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I think the pitfall to avoid is structure your story and scenario in such a way as that people, it's not, the information they need is not something that you could just Google or whatever. I've got a guy I play with whenever I run modern, current Call of Cthulhu. I've never actually confirmed this with him. I've just noticed that whenever we play, he's like, I'm going to call the police. And he's just like, and I'm like, yeah, cool, all right, now, because he's like, I wonder how Brian's going to deal with me calling the police and this and you know, that's just, you have to deal with it. I very rarely have a good answer, other than the police are evil as well. Stares at the camera.
Well,
Yeah.
I live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I would also just have them put their phones away.
Well,
No phones at the table.
Yeah, no phones at the table.
Yeah.
The characters are using their phone.
Oh yeah, no.
Player,
Exactly.
But
you
if you-
control what's on the phone.
Yeah.
But
So you can tell them you
Yeah.
have no service.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you
Or the answers that you get are actually written in Old Sumeric.
can. Yeah. Or the AI was wrong.
The AI is actually in the room now.
Yeah.
It took your job and your wife,
yeah.
and now you're dead.
you summoned it from the internet,
Yeah.
and now you have a problem.
That was yesterday's panel.
That was just your family.
That said, if you are playing a 2010s to 20 horror game and you have phones, there's also a whole other avenue where you've got a screen here, and assuming, again, you've got consent to this, you can send players text messages that their characters are receiving. You know, and that opens up a whole other avenue of things that you can do.
As the publisher of Alice's
I was just
Missing,
about to say.
I was
you
going
know
to say,
anything about
I'd be
this one?
remiss if I didn't say that it's a horror game. And
Yes.
you should all try it because it's a silent role-playing game and you play it over your phones with your friends. And you're texting each other trying to find out where your friend is and she's missing.
Sorry, what was the name of that?
Alice
is
is
Missing.
You can find it at the Gehenna Gaming booth. I think it, correct me if I'm wrong, 354, or no, 3054. So it's on the back end of the hall. We've got copies
Is
of
that
it.
the only booth you can find it at?
Well, you can also find it at the Renegade booth if they still have copies. So the Renegade booth is in the center.
Yeah.
It's award-winning too.
It's an
isn't it?
multi-award.
Multi-award.
I've
It is a
got
multi-award
6
winning.
innies on my wall.
Woo!
I don't remember what they're all for, but some of them are Alice is missing. And that's Spencer Stark. I cannot take full credit for that. We have built on a digital application for that now, so you can play it digitally with your friends online, wherever they are in the world. You can find that at alicesmissing.com. And just check out Hunter's Entertainment in general. Speaking of which,
Yeah, I
it's
gotta go.
12:50.
Yeah.
We all have to go.
Oh, you
You're
need
going to do
to?
a type 10. Yeah, no, I sent an email, and then everyone else said, oh, me too. So I was actually the first one
Oh,
that had to go.
okay.
early. But
So-
you've got a type 10, Bryce.
I do.
Yeah, so no one leave.
So, you guys, try that